Okay, today's session is really covering four deeds that I want you to know. The first deed that should come to mind right away is the grant deed. So the grant deed transferred legal title to real property. So if you say, how do you know you own the house? Because someone deeded you that house, right? The previous seller deeded you that house. They were called the grantor, and you're the grantee if you're the new owner, and the document that transferred legal title to real property was the grant deed, the grant deed. We're also going to cover a little bit today the trust deed. So if you have to go to a lender to borrow money on your home, on your new home you're purchasing, or maybe you're refinancing, then you're going to probably give them a trust deed, yeah, because you're asking the lender to trust you in exchange for lending you this money. So when we talk about ownership of real estate, we're really talking about a bundle of rights. So you see those trees behind me, if you can picture each branch as a right in real property. So you have one branch, and that's the right of possession, the right to physically be in that house. Another branch, the right to the minerals, if there's minerals underneath that house. Another branch, water rights, if maybe you're adjacent to water, a lake or ocean. Another branch, the right to sell the home. You have the right to sell that home. Another branch, you have the right to encumber the home. You have the right to borrow money or lien that home if someone's willing to use it as collateral. So when you own real estate, you have a bundle of rights. And the first deed we mentioned, the grant deed, is when a seller, the grantor, says, okay, I intend to transfer all these rights and interests in this real property to you, the grantee. So a grantee transferred legal title, and it's basically transferring all the rights and interests in the thing owned. However, I just mentioned a trust deed. So when we talk about a trust deed, we're saying you're giving the lender one of those many rights. That's why when you're financing a home, Bank of America is not living with you, right? That's why when you're financing home, Wells Fargo doesn't have the right to borrow more money against your house because they don't own your home. What you've given them is one of those bundle of rights, which is the right to sell, the right to foreclose on you in the event you default on your promise to pay the money back. So we're going to go a little bit into the trust deed as well. Now, when you pay off that loan, maybe you had a great year in real estate and you decided to pay that loan off cash, or you've been there 30 years and you had a fully amortized loan in which you made principal and interest payments over time, which you eventually paid off that home. And now the bank is returning back to you that right that you gave them of foreclosure back to you. And they're going to use a deed called a deed of reconveyance, a deed of reconveyance. So we have a grant deed, we have a trust deed, we have a deed of reconveyance to return back to you. And one more deed I want to go into, the quit claim deed. That deed does pretty much what it says. It quits any ownership interest you may or may not have in the said property, so that later on you can't say, no, I really did own it. So a quit claim deed quits any interest you may or may not have in a property, in real property. That's why we say a quitclaim deed is usually used to clear a cloud on title. So very often a house has had many owners and it's been around for a while. And there might be certain things that make the clear ownership ambiguous or uncertain. So to clear any clouds on title, to clear any ambiguity, then you might use a quit claim deed. Okay, I'm going to share my screen for a second here so that we could look at some bullet points I want you to know when it comes to the grantee. So first off, a grantee transfers legal title of real property. So if you see a question that says, what document is used to transfer legal title of real property? The answer is probably going to be a grant deed. And that's basically from the seller to the buyer. And we call the seller the grantor, the holder of all the rights, and the receiver of all those rights, the grantee. So we have grantor, grantee, and the document itself, the grantee. Now, when does actual transfer take place? Well, we have this concept of delivery and acceptance. So when does actual legal transfer occur? When the grant deed is delivered and accepted. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean physically delivered. It means that the grantor intended this transfer, and the grantee intended acceptance, right? The grantee may not want to accept. Maybe it's a property that has brownfields, it's toxic waste, and it's not something they want. So when does transfer occur? When there's delivery and acceptance. And delivery, again, means the intent was of the grantor to transfer ownership to the grantee. Again, the owner is referred to as the grantor. And when we come across other sessions that I'm going to record here, and you hear words ending in OR, I want you to think that's the person that kind of has the property right. For example, the landlord, the lessor, owns the property, and he gives the lessee the right to physically be there. The grantor owns the property, but he gives all the rights and interests to the grantee. And when we talk about trust deeds in a moment, we'll talk about the trustor being the borrower, the one that owns the home now, and they're giving the lender a certain right in the property, the trustee. So owner is referred to as the grantor. The person receiving the property is referred to as the grantee. Now, what are some minimum requirements for this document that we're talking about? Well, we have 4 minimum requirements. First, it must be in writing. It has to be in writing, can't be verbal. It must have language in it called a granting clause. I, Armando Oliva, grant for valuable consideration the property located at XYZ to you. It needs a reasonable description. Now, note that I'm saying reasonable and not legal. There is a difference. Legal is tract number, lot number, it's a much more detailed description. A reasonable description would be that if this seller happens to own 2 properties on the same street, then the average person would know which one we're talking about from the reasonable description. And then interesting to note, the grantee is signed by the grantor, not the grantee. Now you would think like, why wouldn't the grantee sign it? It's just the way it is. The grantor signs their rights away to the grantee. Now, just as important as what's required is to note what's not required, So it's not required to be notarized, although it usually is. It's not required to be dated, although it usually is. It's not required to be acknowledged. That's part of the notarization. The person acknowledges themselves before a notary public. And recording. This is where a document's taken to, in California, one of, I believe there's 52 counties in California, and records it at the county recorder's office. While deeds usually are, they're not required to be. So on the state exam, this question might appear, which of the following is not required? And they might show in writing, granting clause, recording, reasonable description. And the answer would be recording, because of what I just shared with you, that recording is not required for a valid grant deed. So what transfers legal title to real property in California? A grant deed. Now let's switch over to the trust deed, We often say that a trust deed secures a promissory note. Now, what's a promissory note? That's your promise to pay the lender back, right? So you borrowed $500,000 for that beautiful condo in Malibu. If there's even a condo for $500,000 in Malibu, I'm not sure. Then the bank said, great, here's the contract between you and me that says you owe me $500,000 at 5% interest for 30 years. But I also need some security that in the event you default on that promise, I have some recourse. So the recourse is you are deeding them the right to sell your home, the right to foreclose in the event you default on that promise. Sometimes we refer to that as a trustee transferring naked legal title because it's so strict of any rights except for that one right that you're transferring legal title, but in such a limited situation, only upon default of that promissory note. So you have the promise to pay the money back, and then you kind of have the hammer, which is the trustee that says, hey, this secures this because you know what will happen if you don't pay. We also say that a trust deed creates a lien on your home, a lien on your home. And in another session, when we talk about encumbrances, we'll talk about how a trust deed creates a voluntary specific lien, but not today. Hypothecate. If you see that word hypothecate, a good way to think about it is that it makes the collateral, or it makes the thing collateral for the loan, but you still get to use it. For example, if I need a couple extra bucks this month and I take my watch to the pawn shop, well, they're not going to let me go home with it. They're going to say, we'll give you the money and come back with the money, and then we'll release the watch. But hypothecated loans, like a trust deed loan, is where the collateral, the house, you're using it, right? Aren't you home enjoying that house, having your parties, doing everything else, yet it's collateral for the loan. So that's what we mean by hypothecate. Now, the wording, and this is where some people get tricked up. So let's try to figure this out. So remember how earlier I said OR is the owner of the property, the one with the rights and interest in the thing owned. So in the trust deed, the owner of the property, the borrower, is referred to as the trustor, the trustor. And he or she deeds the right to foreclose to the trustee. Okay, so we have trustor, trustee. However, when we're working with a trust deed, there's three parties. There's the borrower, which we call the trustor. There's the trustee that actually works for the lender. And then there's the lender themselves, the beneficiary. So a trust deed has a trustor, a trustee, and a beneficiary. The trustor is the borrower, the one signing the promise to pay the money back, and also deeding the right to foreclose to this third party that really works for the lender, called the trustee, who's holding that right of foreclosure for the benefit of the lender. Now, as long as you're paying, you'll never hear from the trustee. But in the event you default, then the beneficiary will probably call the trustee and say, hey, I need you to start the foreclosure process. Now, if you pay off that loan, also the lender, the beneficiary, will probably call the trustee and say, hey, they paid me off, the loan is satisfied. Go ahead and give them back that right of foreclosure that you gave me. And that's that deed of reconveyance, That's recorded by the trustee, the one holding the right to foreclose for the benefit of the trustor. Remember, the trustor is the borrower, and that removes the lien once the loan is paid in full. And a quitclaim deed. We'll say a quitclaim deed offers no warranties, no real promises. It's really literally just says, I have no interest in this property and I can't come back later on once I filled out a quitclaim deed and say I did. So a quitclaim deed offers no warranties. It really quits any interest you have or may not have in the property. And we say it's often used to clear the cloud on title. Okay, here's a question that might help put this all together. Let's listen up. I buy a home with no financing. I buy a home with no financing. I buy a home with no financing. What deed or deeds might I have? Tick tock, tick tock. If you're saying grant deed, you got it right. If you said trust deed, here's why that's incorrect. Because the question set up was, I bought a home with no financing, which would mean I don't have a loan, right? So there would be no need for a promissory note and a trust deed. So when I asked the question, I said, I bought a home with no financing, then a grant deed would be there, not a trust deed, because I didn't have to go borrow money from the lender. Let's try another one. So I paid off my home loan with Wells Fargo. What would the trustee give me back? Well, they would give me back that right of foreclosure that I gave them. However, the way they do that is with another deed called a deed of reconveyance. So what does the trustee record for the benefit of the trustor when the loan is paid in full? A deed of reconveyance, a deed of reconveyance. And finally, if someone wants to quit any interest they have in a property or may not have in a property, but they're being asked to do so to clear up any clouds on title, what document would be used? A quit claim deed. Now, does a deed have to be recorded to be valid? What do you think? No, it doesn't. Remember from our grant deed discussion, a deed does not have to be recorded to be valid. However, it usually is. So I want you to feel comfortable with a grant deed, a trust deed, a deed of reconveyance, and a quit claim deed. Hopefully this was helpful.